This is Platemark. My name is Ann Shafer, and I am your host. Platemark is a podcast about prints and the printmaking ecosystem. We're talking about fine art prints, etchings, woodcuts, lithographs, screen prints, and such. This is Series 3 of Platemark, in which I'm interviewing people who occupy various roles in that ecosystem. And today's guest is artist Miguel A. Aragón. He is an artist who also teaches at the City University of New York at Staten Island. His work is amazing. The largest body of work of his has to do with the drug wars, the cartel wars that continue to occur in his hometown of Juarez, which is just across the border from El Paso, Texas. The work has an incredibly tight conceptual circle, meaning that the making of it and the method of the making inform the meaning, and backwards and forwards and all the way around. So listen in and check out how he manages to make all of that make sense. Let's see, housekeeping. I identify as a cis het white woman, and I use the pronouns she, her. I record Platemark in Baltimore, Maryland, the land of the Piscataway Conoy people. Images Miguel and I talk about will be over on the show notes at platemarkpodcast.com. Also, when you're over there, consider just for a moment how much the content I produce means to you, and hit the support and donate button and help me keep the lights on. All right, I think that's it. Let's get rolling. Miguel, it is fabulous to see you this morning. Thank you for coming on Platemark.
Thank you, Anne, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, I've been wanting to do it for a long time. And I don't know, we finally got our poop in a group, as I like to say, and here we are. So can you introduce yourself for listeners?
Yes. So my name is Miguel A. Aragón, and I'm originally from Juarez, Mexico, but I'm based in New York City and technically Berlin as well at the moment. And I'm an associate professor at the CUNY College of Staten Island. I've been here for 10 years. And yeah, that's me.
I can't believe you've been there for 10 years already. How?
I know time went fast, super fast. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nuts. Before we get to Berlin, I want to ask you about Berlin because that sounds pretty fabulous. But tell us how you managed to find yourself in, well, you do other things besides printmaking, but how did you find yourself loving prints?
Honestly, it was by chance. It was pure luck. So I did all my schooling in Mexico, in Juarez, where I was born and raised. So I did all my school up until high school. And then for my bachelor's, in high school in Mexico, and I think also in the US, you have to do this aptitude test, to see like, what are you more suited for? So for mine, it came out that I should consider not industrial design. Industrial design, actually. But at the time, neither in El Paso, Texas or Juarez had that program. So the closest thing that we had was graphic design, which, in my very naive mind, I thought, well, that's close enough, and we did have the program in Mexico, but it was brand new. So I kind of didn't want to go there because I felt like, well, they're just starting. So they kind of maybe don't know what they're doing. And so I decided, well, I'm going to go to Utah at the University of Texas at El Paso, which is just across the border. I ended up going over there for graphic design, and graphic design is part of the art program. So I had to take all of the intro classes for all the art classes, metal, sculpture, printmaking. And I had no idea what printmaking was. I mean, I had never taken an art class, honestly. I actually, when I was doing my high school, I was kind of like in the group for towards engineering, actually. And so I never really took any art classes. Growing up, I just never, I never was exposed to that, I guess. So I had no idea, what to do. But I was pursuing graphic design, so I had to take all these classes. And walking on the art building, the printmaking professor would actually put prints on some glass displays that he had along the hallways. And I remember seeing those, like you're walking around the building. And to me, I thought they were just ink and pen drawing, essentially, because they were just, these beautiful black lines on white paper. And I asked around, like, what class did they do those ones? Because I wanted to try something like that. And they told me, oh, it's the printmaking class. You should take it. So I did. I registered not knowing what it was. And first day, the professor did a demo using Sintra. We call it Comatex. back at the border. And, he did a very quick intaglio in relief using the same plate. And I was hooked. Like, I was like, this is him. After the class ended, very first class, I went to the office, the registrar's office, and changed my major to
Oh,
printmaking.
in one pull off of the press.
One pull off of the press. Yeah. I mean, he made it's magical, right? I mean, it was so quick. Like, he had a small plate of Sintra, and then he drew with a ballpoint pen, stopped enough that he could make the indentations, and then he inked it up in taglio, run to the press, and then he took it back and then rolled it with a brayer, run it to the press again. And so you get, I got to see like the positive and negative of the image. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. So that was it. Yeah. I was like, this is what I want to do.
That's crazy. I mean, it kind of fits in with your mechanical engineering brain, I think, a little bit, right?
It does. I mean, I think there's a lot of connections there. It's process based, which kind of what, a lot of engineering is as well. And it's all that science, which I had kind of like the background back then. Yeah.
Wow. And who was the professor?
Kim Bauer, who actually just retired this semester with final semesters, but they just had a big party for him at school, which I'm very sad that I couldn't attend. But yeah, he was amazing professor. He's, my mentor and the biggest influence I have for my career.
Yeah, I think everybody has got that person. I say it all the time. Like my guy was Arn Lewis, art history professor at Worcester. And, it was just his passion, and just he could just wrap the classroom around his little finger as he was talking. It was insane. It was so good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he was actually my very first college professor. On my first semester, I didn't take printmaking until I think it was my second semester. But on my first semester, I had the introduction to drawing, and he was the professor for that class too. And that was also a trip because, like I said, I never had taken classes in art. So the very first class for drawing, he had set up this still life, and then, we all kind of sat around our tables. And so he comes in once the class starts, and he says, okay, draw what you see. And so everybody starts drawing, and I'm just like sitting there, like, I don't know how to do this. Like, I kind of need a little bit more instruction. So for a few minutes, I was just sitting there looking at the still life. And then, he started walking around, giving tips to students and whatnot. And so he comes to me and he's like, well, have you drawn anything? And I told him, like, I've never done this. Like, I don't even know where to start. So he started giving me some pointers and what to do. And it was great. I mean, I enjoyed his way of teaching. And so when I learned that he was also the print professor, I was like, okay, that's great. I like him. I obviously enjoyed his class. And he's very experimental. Like, he's primarily an intaglio person. That's what he does in his own work. But every summer he would explore all kinds of crazy ways of making work. Just experimenting, trying to find new ways of creating marks. And then, once the semester started, like, he would teach all of that to us, the students, saying like, oh, I found this, I figured this out, and, try this and try that. So it was great. Like, it was always immense curiosity. And so that was, just something that I always remember with them. And even now, I feel like every time I went back home to visit, I would always reach out so we could, hang out and, for dinner or something. And then he will, bring me all these test plates or all these experiments that he did over the summer. And he would show me, it's like, oh, you should do this, and you should try this. And I'm like, man, I'm younger. I should be doing that. I should be like ahead of you. And I can't catch up to him.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Well, so when you're in Berlin in the summertime, what are you doing?
For the most part, I'm chilling. I'm going to be honest. I do take it more as a break. I stay at a place that's close to one of the lakes. So I take advantage of actually going to swim all summer, which is really nice. We're kind of close to the world. Basically, the woods is our backyard. So it's just like a mile walk to the lake, and then, just chill over there. I've done some kind of residencies and some work when I'm over there, but for the most part, it's just taking a break from the semester and from all the travel that I do during the busy months, I guess. my girlfriend lives there. She's a Berliner. So that's why I spend my summers and my winters, actually. I spend both of those breaks over there, working on the relationship. And she's an artist as well. She's a painter. So she has a studio. So technically I have a studio as well, but as a painter, she takes over the whole space. So like there's no space for me. She moves things around every now and then and like leaves me a little table so that I can work. And, that's encouraged me to do some work over there. But sometimes I find it a little hard. But yeah.
Is she an artist full time?
Yeah, part-time. She works for kind of like an after school program. But it's only part-time. So the rest of the time, she's trying to be an artist. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Is she German herself?
She is. Yeah, she's Berliner.
She is you could call yourself a Berliner at some point, right?
I mean, I've been going there also for, I think 8 years now. So I guess technically, I'm waiting until I have been there 10 years. Same with New York. Because in New York, they told me, you're going to wait 10 years until you stop on New York. So I was like, okay, I am a New Yorker now. I'm waiting. I'm close to being a Berlin.
Right. In Baltimore, you don't count unless you were born here.
There you go.
Oh, well. So during the year, you're teaching at the City University of Staten Island. How big is the printmaking department there?
Oh, it's small. It's just me. The department is big in the sense that it's comprised of music, dance, drama, the theater, obviously, and then the art and photography and art history. So, but when it comes to studio art, there's only 3 of us. There's only one sculptor, one painter, and one printmaker, myself, as full timers. And then, we have several adjuncts that we hire for, to fill some of the other classes. And then we also have one art historian and 2 full-time photographers, which, I do see them as my colleagues of the art program as well. Photography they are their own program, but we do work together for the BFA. So we have a BA and then we have a BFA. So for the BFA, technically photography and studio, we're kind of like the same group. It's just, we do have concentrations for either studio art or photography.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you teaching experimental printmaking, or are you going straight down the, let's start with woodcut?
No, I am. So the way that I teach my class, I have 3 levels of the classes. So I have the introduction to printmaking, which is the beginning, obviously. And I run that one as a survey. So I do one project with all the techniques in a very basic format. So usually just black and white, one layer, obviously. And then I have the intermediate class and then also the advanced class. And for those ones, usually for the intermediate, I guess I would call it also sort of like a survey where I basically take the same technique, but then adding color or adding layers. And then for the advanced, that's when I start kind of like experimenting a little bit more with different projects. So I have a laser engraver on campus. It was part of my package for when I was hired, with something that I requested and they got for me. So that was great. So I do sometimes projects with the laser engraver. And then over the years, I've been acquiring equipment for screen printing because they didn't have anything for screen printing.
Oh.
So I started teaching very DIY screen printing, using like a work lamp and, piece of glass on top of the screen. I did that for multiple years, but fortunately, I was able to finally buy an exposure unit and a washout booth and everything. So this semester actually was the first time that I taught a class just on screen print. I developed the class and I taught it myself and it went pretty well. So I'm glad that I'm going to be able to now also have that one as sort of as a backup for teaching. Yeah.
And how many kids are majoring in printmaking, or are they fine art majors?
So we don't have specializations, I guess. They're just basically art students. As far as majors total, I think right now we have around 30 to 50, I want to say. And that's the usual number, but that's for the BA. For the BFA, it varies a little bit more. BFA usually tends to be smaller. We have around 10, 12 students who apply for the BFA every year. So we do it by application. They have to do prerequisite classes first, and then every fall we do an event where we have a preliminary portfolio review. So then the students, bring their portfolio, we talk to them and, either encourage them to definitely apply or to keep working on their work before the application. The applications is usually on May 1st at the deadline. So this coming May, we're going to be reviewing applicants. And like I said, usually we get about 10 to 12 applications. And for the most part, we usually accept all the students. I mean, there's been a few that unfortunately weren't just, not strong enough, or we thought that a BA degree was more suited for what they were wanted for their future. So that's kind of how it varies. My student population is very interesting in the sense that they're all working class students, and they're actually like working students. So they usually are either working at least part-time, if not also full-time, while at the same time that they're studying. So while we have, 30 to 50 majors, it doesn't mean that that they're graduating right away and that we're always kind of having this influx. Rather, they just, for some of them, take them, 6 years or maybe even longer, because sometimes they're actually part-time students. They're not full-time students.
So does that mean that Staten Island's campus doesn't have residential housing? Everybody's commuting?
No, we do have, when I was hired 10 years ago, that was the same year that they opened residential or housing, student housing. So we do have housing. I've had students who actually lived in the dorms here on campus. I don't think I've had a student recently who were living on student housing, but we do have students from other boroughs or other cities, even other countries actually. It's still, I would say, mostly local students, like from Staten Island. I've had students from the Bronx, all the way from the Bronx or Brooklyn, Queens. So it is a good mix. It is a very mixed community of students, all types of students, which is kind of great.
Oh, that's cool.
Mhm.
So wait, we skipped right over your graduate school experience in Austin.
Correct.
Yeah. What was that program like?
So interesting. Let me put it that way.
Oh.
Okay. There's some backstory to it. So when I finished my bachelor's, this was back in early 2000, I wanted to do my master's immediately. I felt that I was prepared. I was ready. So I applied. I got into some of the top programs of the country. And unfortunately, I just couldn't go because I was an international student and the offers just were not big enough for me to be able to actually go and attend those schools, primarily because they were just expensive because they were the top programs. And being an international, I did not qualify for a lot of their support that they had. So that was devastating for me because I couldn't go and do my master's. So, it hit me pretty hard. And then I just took a long break, not necessarily by choice. It just gonna happen. Time just goes by, as we said earlier. So 7 years later, 6 years later, I guess, I ended up applying again to do my master's because, one day I was looking at my life and like, I really want to do my master's and the time is just going by too fast. I was feeling like I would lose my shot essentially. So I only applied to programs where I could pay if I had to, because I was still, Mexican international. So Austin was one of those places. I only applied to actually 2 places. I got in on both. Austin was the best offer because it was essentially a full ride, still very tight, financially, but I was going to be able to make it work. So I ended up going to Austin without visiting the campus. Now, I had visited the campus during the GC conference in 2001 when I was actually graduating from my bachelor's. And at that time, I remember the facilities being just amazing. Of course, they picked it up for the conference. It was my very first conference, so I was not only just, amazed by the whole conference itself, but also on the studios. So in my mind, I was like, well, I remember the studios being great and it's been, 7 years. So they have to be better because you improve things, right? So yeah, no, I got to counter and I kid you not, I felt like I went back in time and I went into 2001 and saw the video the same, but obviously not as new. They were youth. And so I was a little disappointed. I'm not going to lie, but I was like, I'm here and I'm here to make work. I'm here to take advantage of this. So I'm not going to let this, bring me down. And that's what it was. I mean, I just took advantage of the time and the facilities and the faculty and all the opportunities that the school provided. And I made it the best experience that I could have gotten. Because, I was, I guess, old and mature enough to know, wise enough to know that, to do that. Um, there were a lot of problems with the school and with some of the faculty that I don't want to mention because it was, it's still a love-hate relationship for me. Like I, I really hate my experience for my master's, but at the same time, I love it because it made me the artist that I am and the person that I am. And so I don't think I would be the same artist and person that I am if I had not gone through all of those problems and all of those challenges. So as much as I hate them, I've learned to love them, I guess, because like I said, it just made me who I am. It made me resourceful in many things in that, I was denied something. So I had to figure out how to do it. That's how I apply everything to, in my work now and in my life. Like, well, I mean, nobody's going to give it to you in a platter, gold platter. So you got to go look for the platter. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, hate might be a strong word. Challenges are often a good thing. It's hard. Yeah. What were you doing between the BFA and the MFA?
That's an interesting story too, because, um, so once I graduated, I actually graduated with a double major in printmaking and graphic design from my bachelor's. So graduating from UTEP, I got a working visa for a year, to work in the US. That's kind of part of the deal when you study in the US. And so for that year, I worked as a graphic designer in El Paso. And after the year, I had to go back to Mexico because, I just didn't like working as a graphic designer. I like graphic design, but I realized I don't want to be a graphic designer, like working as one. After the year ended, I wasn't really looking for like a full-time job where I could stay and get a visa. So I went back home. I didn't know what to do. Through the grapevine, somehow I heard that the University of Juarez was looking for a printmaker to teach classes because the printmaker that they had left all of a sudden. And so this is, January, I think, when I heard. So classes are about to start. And so they're really scrambling to find somebody. And so they told me you should go and, apply or, tell them that, that you have the skills. So I went and met with the director. This is for actually also for the graphic design program. They have printmaking classes as part of the design program. So I went, I brought my portfolio. She liked it. And she was like, look, you don't have a master's, you only have a bachelor's. So technically I shouldn't hire you, but we really need somebody to teach. And so she was like, I'm going to give you one class and then we'll see how it works. And if it works, we'll talk about the future, maybe giving you more classes or classes again. And so I stayed there for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I was young, fresh out of my bachelor's. I didn't know how to teach. I kind of learned by doing it. And it's funny, the very first class that semester, I went to the classroom and my students were waiting outside the classroom because there was another class that was happening in there. And, the class ended, but the professor just kept chatting with one of the students or some of the students, and they were just not going out of the classroom. And in the meantime, we're outside waiting. And I guess, the professor was waiting for the other professor to come in and, kick them out or something. And so, after like, I don't know, like maybe like 10 or 15 minutes, I'm like, man, we need to go because technically we're already class. So I basically come in and I told him, hey, we have another class coming. So would you mind vacating the classroom? And he was like, oh yeah, sorry, And so, before this, like all the students around me, they're talking, oh, do you know who this Miguel is? He's the new professor, but, he must be new because, I don't know him and I haven't heard anything. And I'm just next to them. They thought I was a student. So when we all come in and then I introduce myself, I can feel the shock in their eyes. Oh, you guys are professor. I mean, I'm potentially the same age as they are, just few years
Right.
older. So um, it was very, very interesting. But yeah, so that's what I did. So, that time was interesting in that it gave me skills, obviously, to become a professor and it gave me access to be able to be making work. So that's how I was able to continue my practice because I had access to the school. And so I would, take advantage of making prints there.
Sure.
Um, so it was, it was a good, it was a good thing that at the time I was not appreciating because at the time, I was still very depressed that I had not been able to go to do my master's and I was feeling stuck in the city in Juarez. Like I'm living here and I'm wasting my potential. That's how I was thinking. And I wasn't even appreciating the fact that I was teaching without having a master's degree and that I had access and, that all of this was going to basically be very helpful for me many years later. I mean, now obviously, hindsight, I'm like, man, I'm so happy and so glad that I got that because it really helped me out.
What was growing up in Juarez like? Because it seems like it's become a real battleground for these cartels and things. But what was it like when you were a kid?
Very different. So it's not the city that I remember as a kid. I don't know how to explain it, to be honest. I mean, it was just a normal city. It's always been an industrial city, for manufacturing. The maquiladoras or the US factories, they've always been there because, it's on the border. It's a very easy commute from one city to the other. It's just crossing the bridge, either by foot or by car. So it's always had that going for it. And yeah, I mean, growing up, it was normal for us. I mean, I remember, it's kind of like the cliches that we see now on like all these TikTok videos, of like, all these 90s kids that we basically would leave our home, in at 2 in the afternoon to go play with our friends. And we would just tell our parents, I'll be back later. And then we come back like at 10 at night and the parents have no idea where the hell we were and they would never worry. And it really was that. I mean, I remember, after school, you go back, you have lunch and then you do your homework and then you go out and play on the street, like literally on the street, play football or play whatever. And then, you go to another friend's house, which is, like several blocks away from your house. And then you go to another friend's house, which is another, few blocks away. And, before you know it, you're miles away from your house. And then you're coming back at home at night and, just walking. It was, it was normal. It was great. But unfortunately, the violence was already happening. That's one thing that I always, tell during my artist lectures is that the violence has always been in the cities. The difference was that before the actual, so-called war on drugs, the official naming of it, the violence was in what I call closed doors, meaning that the cartels were killing each other, obviously for control of the area, but they did not want it to make noise. They didn't want to make the news. They didn't want the police or the citizens to know about it. So they would do it, hiding. So they would kidnap cartel members or gang members. Unfortunately, they would kill them and then they would try to actually disappear the bodies. There's a lot of people who actually got disappeared and, their bodies were never found during this time. And every now and then they would show up because, sometimes either they were lazy or I don't know, but like they would only put them in the trunk of a car and then they would abandon the car or they would bury them, but not deep enough. So eventually, the corpse, would reveal itself over time. So I remember reading all those stories in the newspapers. So we all knew about it, but we were not worried or shocked about it because it wasn't affecting us directly, the citizens. You kind of knew that if you're not in that world, you're fine, you're safe. But then when the official drug war was declared, that's when everything changed because then at that point, it just became a battleground. The city became a battlefield in that they were running from cartels, they were running from the law enforcement. And so they just didn't have the time, I guess, to prepare to not, do it this on the public view, I guess.
The war on drugs was the U.S. driven war on drugs, or did Mexico have its own war on drugs?
No, that was Mexico.
Yeah.
Mexico
Okay.
officially declared it in 2006, at the end of
6. Oh.
2006. Yeah. I mean, I guess it was driven by the US too. I mean, the US was pushing for it and, trying to get all these kingpins or trying to stop the flow of drugs into the US.
Sure.
So the US definitely, was encouraging it, but it was Mexico who decided. Felipe
Okay.
Calderon was the one who decided we need to crack on drugs. And, he made a big speech, and I think it was December of 2006 when he made this speech, to the nation. I will say that by that time, the violence was starting to get a little bit out of hand, which is why he kind of did that. But by doing it, he only, expanded the violence. It just, yeah, it was rough. So, by then I was already in my 20s. So I had, spent my youth, I guess, growing up in the city. And yeah, I mean, really after 2006, the city changed so much. I mean, I lived there up until 2009. That's when I left for Austin for my master's. And so 2009, the city changed drastically. And I saw those changes of the city when I left to Austin. After my first semester, I came back, having to get back home after the break, after the fall. And, this was 4 months after I had left. My mom picked me up in the airport in El Paso because it was easier to fly, Austin to El Paso. Picks me up, and then we drive into Mexico, into Juarez. And I just remember very clearly, we come into Mexico and we're driving home, and I'm just looking at the city, and it really looked to me like a battlefield, like a
Oh.
city in ruin. And I remember I asked my mom, like, man, what happened during this 4 months that I was, in Austin doing my master's? What happened to the city? And she's like, it's exactly the same as when you left. And that's the moment that I realized that when I was living there, I had put like blinders on my eyes,
Uh,
and that I didn't really acknowledge the change that was happening in the city. And I realized then that that's what everybody in the city was doing. I needed that distance to be able to really see what had happened. It was like this filter that was removed. So that's when I started paying more attention. And I mean, actually, that's when I kind of started doing the work about it, because it's like, man, I and all the citizens in Juarez, we were just exposed to all of this, and we had to live through it in the best way that we could. And the best way was to, in a way, kind of ignore it, or, make the best of it in a way. And that's still what kind of drives my work, that sense of feeling like we have to pay attention, because otherwise things change without realizing it.
right. Yeah. I mean, that's sort of human nature, right? Is like you kind of get along to go along to get along. That's how we all get complicit. That's how, Germans living in Nazi Germany were complicit by just saying, well, it's not, this next step that they have taken, just like under, previous presidents here, the next step. You're like, well,
Yeah.
it's, okay. But you keep going, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's what we have to do to continue having a purposeful and, happy life in, however, whatever situation you're in.
Right.
And I think that's exactly what we were doing. And I want to shed a light on that, because it I think it is important that we don't lose that fight. Because yes, in this country, like what happened, what has been happening and what's happening in the world, just in general, it it's hard. It's hard to see it, because a lot of people are ignoring it because they want to feel burdened by it, which I completely, understand. But that's what created the problem of having like massism right that, back then, and way kind of now to Trumpism and extreme patriotism,
Right.
it's what, yeah.
Yeah. But it's also the feeling of I'm just one person, and A, what can I do to affect change? And B, if I stick my neck out, there's some self-preservation there too, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, of course. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So tell us about this body of work, because it's the thing that made me first come to know you, and I think it seems to be ongoing.
Mhm. Yeah. So when I was doing my master's, and then after having that experience of going back home and like realizing, oh, this is happening, I had already been thinking about it, obviously, for a long time. But that moment of realization that even though I was paying attention and still realizing, oh, I'm not even paying attention, to the full extent that I should be, it was kind of eye opening. So I decided I need to make work about this subject matter and, try to expose it to as a wide audience as possible. It all started with using images from the newspapers from Juarez. So it was all local within the city because I lived in the city through the worst years, I guess, the more violent years, 2008 and I guess 2009 as well. That's when the city was the most violent city in the world. And, you know, it was this place where there were multiple crime scenes, multiple events on a daily basis. So it was kind of hard to wake up in the morning, see the news or grab the newspaper and then see essentially like 4 or 5 pages of nothing but, all these reports on crimes that had happened, shootouts in this neighborhood and then a few hours later in this other neighborhood. And so I had been collecting those images and those stories well before the official program was. And I don't know why. It was just maybe morbid curiosity, but I had saved a lot of those newspapers. And so I went back, picked them up and started using those as the basis for my work.
Well, and one thing to explain to listeners is the difference between what we see in the newspapers and what was printed in Mexico.
Right. So we don't shy on showing raw and crude images on the media. It's actually normal for Mexico to have images of intense violence, and very explicit on the front cover of newspapers. And
So
so
dead bodies
of
is
dead
what
bodies. Yeah.
yeah.
And all kinds of violence. I mean, not just drug violence or crime violence, but even just like car crash or accident, somebody being hit by a car or by a bus, dismembering a body or, the person or mangling it, those pictures would be published in the newspaper. They were sensationalist. I mean, of course, it's kind of like the yellow pages in a way. Well, not yellow pages. Well, they're called
Tabloids.
the tabloids. Thank you.
Yeah.
It was called the yellow pages in Mexico.
Oh, that's funny.
That's why. But yeah, then I have to think that it's actually the yellow page. Anyway, so those images were just very explicit. Let's put it that way, and that's what I was using. But I knew that I didn't want to shock the viewer. In this case, American audience because I was in the U.S. and I knew that was going to be my immediate audience because people here are not used to it. And also because I just kind of know that that's just not going to work. Shocking people is not effective. So I was looking for a way that I could show that violence and that, rawness of the imagery in a more subtle way. And so I stripped all the color from the work and I just concentrated on creating these images that were very seductive. But then once you spend time looking at them, then the image kind of reappears to you. And then at that point, you would be shocked, but not to an extent that you would be grossed out because you don't have explicit colors or the explicit, details of it. So for this, I'm talking about the body of work that I did with the laser engraver, where I was engraving into cardboard the photographs that I had collected. And so I was letting the machine essentially draw for me the image. And then I would print that. I would use that as a plate for printing it via intaglio. And I would only transfer the suit that the machine would create by burning the cardboard. And so the images, the vinyl pieces are essentially just white on white and this very faint, brown tone that kind of create the image. So when you're looking at them, they look very abstract and they look almost like landscape. But when you spend enough time looking at them, the image from the photograph really reveals itself. And it's kind of hard to see them. For me, it's hard to see them visually because when you see them visually, the image is easier to read.
Oh, yes.
There's something about the digital photograph that it just really, I don't know, like illustrates the photograph. When you see them in person, they're physical because there's embossment too. Because I was engraving the cardboard and then I was taking some pieces out to be able to create the embossment in certain areas. And then
Ah,
the tones are also more subtle. There's degradation of the tones. And so when you see them in person, they're much more abstract and they're much more difficult to read. Like I said, you have to be in front of them for a few minutes before you can actually read the image. And that was something that, I was looking for when I was making this body of work. I wanted the viewer to linger on the piece. And I was very pleasantly surprised that once they see or once they understand what it is that they're seeing, they don't turn away. They keep looking at the image and I think they inspect the image with even more detail, which is exactly what I wanted. And then they come and ask me questions about it, obviously.
how big are these works? These are what this was from this past year?
No, those were done during my master. That's when I started doing
Oh,
those pieces. So those are
okay.
2012,
Okay.
2011. Yeah. Uh,
These are the ones that are the white and white with, and the soot is just sort of a very light brown, right? That's what we're
Correct.
talking about? Okay.
Correct.
Just want to make sure I'm on the right place.
Yeah. So they're full sheet. They're 22 by 30.
Okay.
I tried making them bigger, but they didn't work because I would have to tile them up and the tiling kind of distracted them from the photograph. I also made them smaller. I did make a whole series, the same images smaller in a smaller scale, and they worked as well. It's interesting because they look different, but they are the same at the same time. It's hard to explain. So I have the same body of work in two sizes, in the 22 by 30, and then in the image size, I think is 4 by 6 inches. I
Huh.
also printed them not in white, but in cream color paper.
The way the laser engraver cuts the images, it has a very like Illustrator vector kind of, not jaggedness, but it's, and then it looks like it could be, I mean, it can skew really graphic design in its kind of stylization, and then all of a sudden you kind of come back, and I think the emboss is really important because it just kind of gives this peaks and valleys thing, and then the super light brown of the soot is so subtle. I mean, it's really, they're hauntingly gorgeous, and I can imagine, I mean, seeing it on screen on my computer, like, it comes together really fast because it's so much smaller than
Mhm.
the actual thing, but boy, seeing them in person just must be like, "What?" And then
Yeah.
snap. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. One of my classmates, one of my friends, he described them as me giving the viewer a punch in the gut, which
Oh,
I think is
yeah.
true. I think it's very true because, like I said, when I first started showing them, everybody was super into them visually, like they're eye candy. They would see them in my studio, come in and they would get so, close to them, inspecting them and like, wow, how did, it was kind of like the oddness of like, how did you do this? Because it was so beautiful material wise. And then also the image, it just looked very like an abstract landscape. So very attractive. And so they will be just like, oh, wow, my God, looking at the image and this is really great. This is really beautiful. And can't think beautiful as you just said it, that one expression came out so many times when people were talking about this work, because that's exactly how they describe them, because they were like, they're so beautiful. And then it hits them. Then they see the cadaver and then they're like, whoa, but they don't stop looking at it. And that's what I was looking for. And they're like, oh, I get it. And they're still looking at it. They're still inspecting it. And I can sense, like this weight that is getting in their soul or in their body. And they understand that it's a difficult image to look at, but they can't stop looking at it. And they can't deny that it's still beautiful. And so, they always live with, I think that's a sense of understanding of the problem that the country has. But at the same time, on the beauty that life has, which is that paradox that I'm trying to speak with this work. And that is, I'm not judging these people, and I don't say their names. I don't identify them because I'm using people who are cartel members, members of the law enforcement, and also just innocent bystanders. And so for me, there's just human. There were people. It They were not good guys or bad guys. There were people. There were somebody's brother or father. It's just men, but lost their lives because in a violent way. And that's kind of that's what I want to concentrate. That we need to be better as a society.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm with you. So then the large reduction woodcuts that you did at Flatbed came after the laser engraved.
I developed this technique of the laser engraver and I run with it. I went wild and I made a ton of work. I think I have like close to 70 images, different images in this series. And then, after a while, I realized like, well, one, I got bored of doing it because it's repetitive. I'm doing the same thing and the same thing over and over. And even though the image is different and the pieces look different, to me, they all look the same. And like, okay, I'm bored. This is not working. And so I started questioning myself, like, is this effective, for the subject matter? I want to be respectful and truthful about it. So I started looking, well, what else can I do? So I went back again to the original sources and looking at the photographs, I realized that they're all pixelated because they were printed on the newspaper.
Right.
And so, just also looking at different artists, essentially to try to get some extra inspiration and how I can, change or explore the subject from a different point of view. I, I decided that I was just going to make them more representational, easier to read. And so I got straight on the portraits and I said, I'm going to now crop them to the portrait size, just the face, make it, visible, readable. And I guess, I don't know how I came up with the handrail, to be honest. I can't really remember. I think it was just a collection of many different things that I saw. Because I remember seeing some artists who were cutting circles to create images. And there was one particular artist that I'm forgetting her name, but she was using, there's a Japanese tool that cuts perfect circles. And so she would cut onto canvas, black canvas, she would cut circles of different sizes and create a portrait that way. So I remember seeing that. And then I thought, well, those are pixels, essentially.
Basically, yeah.
But they're just perfect. And I don't want perfect circles. So how can I do circles that are violent and that are, not perfect? And it's like, well, I can drill them. There's different types of drill bits. And so that's what I did. I started drilling those portraits. So what I did is I made a stack of paper, white paper, black paper, and then I just had a really big Xerox down of the portrait, put them all together as a sandwich, as a stack on top of a piece of wood, and then just drill with different size drill bits. And that's how I made the block. And then the paper, those became, quote unquote print because they were the same image, but it was the absence. There's no ink obviously in those. It's just the absence of the paper, but it still creates the image. And the reason that I did that is because I wanted to make installations where I could have multiples of the portrait to be able to like do a full wall of all these portraits. And I did both black and white paper because I kind of had a sign metaphorically that the white paper was kind of like the bone on our system. The black paper, was, I guess, sort of like the skin in a way. And then actually I started drilling them on drywall, not wood, because I wanted something that was soft to be able to drill without injuring myself, physically. And so the drywall was creating all these dust that was sticking to the black paper for some reason. And so it created this ghostly manifestation of the portrait on those black papers that to me represented the soul because it's like the figure, but it's ephemeral. I mean, if I take those papers, the dust comes off, not completely though. I've shown them multiple times and every time it changes, but there's still a lot of dust in there. And that's really strange to me. And the portrait itself is still going to be there because the absence of the holes are still there. So I had like all the, metaphors for the work. And eventually when Flatbed invited me to collaborate with them and publish, I told them, well, I had been doing this, the hand drill prints for a while. And so I knew that I could do woodcut easily. I said, well, we can try this. I know you really want print. My prints are not, quote unquote traditional prints. So I said, let's do this. I'll do the same thing that I'm doing, but I'll do them on wood and then we'll print them at the woodblock. They were all for it. So we did them. But at the same time, I wanted to challenge myself. So I told them, well, let's do it on copper as well. I've never done it on copper. I said, well, let's do an aqua tint. And they were more than receptive for the idea. So we all went in with the notion that if it fails, it fails. And, it's an experiment and, at least we'll have it to woodblock. That was kind of my selling point. But man, that etching just worked out beautifully. A lot of credit goes to Kathy for figuring out. And it was a lot of work because I had to drill basically 3 different templates to create the image because I had to drill on the copper for the highlight directly. And then I had to do 2 stencils on paper, same size, drilling the figure to use those for the step out for the different tones. And so that's how we ended up using those to step out with asphaltum, during the acid times. And so it was intense. But it was great. I mean, I loved it. I've only done that one. I want to do more of those because I really enjoy the process. I think it worked out beautifully. And I know they're interested as well in doing more of those. We just haven't had the time. And, also just financially, we need to be a little bit more, careful. And so we're kind of waiting for the right moment to hopefully go back and do more of those. Because I also feel like I know I can do it myself, but I wouldn't be able to do them that large. And I feel like they need to be that large. I'm waiting for maybe another opportunity, either with them or some other place where I can go back and do them. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So the thing that's so wonderful about these portrait heads of these dead members of whoever, cartel or the police force or innocent bystanders. I mean, printmaking is all about layers and transitions and things, but it's like you've taken it even farther beyond that. Like to start with, a stack. I never would have thought of taking a stack of papers and drilling and creating multiples in that way, even though they're basically unique. I mean, it's such a funny twist on the idea of the matrix and then to create this sculptural drywall bit that can stand as its own sculpture, right? And then to translate it all into woodcut, and then even farther into alligator. Like, oh my God!
So again, all this is influence from Kim Bauer, my professor. It is that endless curiosity of testing materials and just coming up with ways of creating marks on paper or on whatever. I think not in a traditional sense because of him. And that's kind of what I want. I don't want to be a traditional printmaker. If I wanted to, I could spend more time honing my skills in becoming a super amazing wood carver or an intaglio person. And I'm not interested. And not because I don't like it. I do. I enjoy it. I love it. I love when people do that. And I collect a lot of work in those mediums. It just is not what I want for my work. I also think on my subject matter, and the way that I think is that subject matter and technique, it has to be a perfect marriage of both. It's not about having an idea and then doing it in a medium. If the medium does not fit the idea, it's going to fail. It might be a beautiful painting, but it doesn't have to be a painting. Is it better because it's a painting? Maybe not. Same for print. Does it have to be a print? And I do think as a printmaker, because I was trained obviously that way. And so when I was coming up with this idea, the laser engraver, the hand drill, I was thinking of multiple, but I was like, how can I make this not a traditional print, but more so like, what can I use to enhance the image and then enhance the idea? And so in the end, it is a work of art. It's not a print or it's not a work on paper or it's not a painting. It doesn't matter. It's a work of art. I think a lot of the time, specifically printmakers, we tend to forget that. And we tend to get seduced by the technique way too much. In my opinion, for me, that's the wrong approach. Or, it's not the way that I think. It's not the way that I want. And that it is me, but it is also the influence from Kim Bauer. Like he just pushed us, to always do that. And like I said, he still does it. Still last year I went and I don't remember what he was showing me, but he was showing me some other experiments he was doing. I was like, what do you think of this? Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
The other thing about the hand-drilled paper works that just struck me is that, because they're perforated and if you hung them, not exactly against the wall, but you had lights and shadows going through them, there's that cool aspect. But it's also, like a target practice for riflemen or something. Like it's just,
Hmm.
dotted all the way around this piece of paper. So it's like the conceptual circle is super tight.
Yeah, no, I mean, that I did not think of that, the target paper aspect of it, until I was making it. Once I was making them, I realized, oh, this is perfect. It came out of, one of those happy mistakes, I guess, or happy surprises, because that wasn't planned from the beginning. And I do install them a little bit separated from the wall because I do want those shadows. And also, I don't frame them usually for exhibitions, I don't frame them because I want people walking around them. And the paper is so thin that with the breeze of you walking around it, it moves and it creates, it's eerie. It's creepy. And that's what it needs to be. I am trying to humanize these people, but I also want you to feel the violence in which they left this world. And so you gotta feel both. You gotta feel the love for your life or for life in general, but also the respect and the sadness for what happened.
For sure. Yeah. But it's a funny push pull because they're elegant in their way, especially if they're
Yeah.
hanging off the wall and wafting in the breeze. Like, they're just beautiful as objects. And then the subject matter, it's like it's a whipsaw, back and forth. They're
Yeah.
so good, Miguel. They're so good.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I've been experimenting now with making them into chiaroscuro woodcuts, which are the last prints that I did with flatbed, just last year, actually. And that's where I'm going to take them next. And those are a little bit more traditional. I am just drilling, 3 different blocks, printing them all together. And the reason for that is because I, you know, I started very abstract and then I bring more visibility or I guess realism to make it more apparent that it is a portrait. And I think now I'm pushing it even further again in that I want to start getting a little bit more volume to the figures and enhance the drama, I guess. So it's kind of interesting now. I just, realized recently that I'm going backwards. Usually people start very figurative and then they go abstract. And I'm doing the reverse. I'm trying abstract and I'm tuning the image more and more. So I don't know where it's gonna go, but that's kind of where I'm headed. I think with this, I'm gonna be experimenting with the chiaroscuro woodcuts for a while. I'm happy because I'm gonna be getting a CNC router for the colors.
Oh,
So I'm expecting it now. I mean, actually, I believe it's ordered already, so it should be on its way soon. So hopefully next year I'll have it here in my office and start playing, making large woodblocks.
wow. All right.
Yeah.
So for people who aren't artists and don't have their finger on the pulse, can you describe what a CNC router does?
So a CNC router is it's a machine that essentially drills. It has like an X and Y axis, and through the computer you send out a file, and it just basically again draws for you. Except that it's drawing by drilling different holes or different use depending on the bits that you use. Obviously, you can create images that way. It's usually more used for architecture, where you can create like this topographic landscapes on wood. But the way that I'm planning on using it is essentially just, doing all the drilling by machine rather than my hand. Because, I had to take a break after doing the hand drills as well because, it was hurting my wrist from all the vibration. it is pretty hard on the body. And so I'm excited that I'm going to be able to do it without hurting physically.
Yeah, right. You can drill into wood, but can you drill into other materials, plexi or sinter or something?
You can drill pretty much in anything that you may want to try. And it kind of depends on the bit. I mean, I guess in theory, I could also use a metal bit and drill onto metal. I mean, I'm definitely going to experiment. Just gotta be careful. Don't try this at home.
That's
Without
right.
an expert. So I'm going to try to become an expert so I can try it. But I'm going to be safe about it, obviously. So, yeah.
Well, and then, so how does that differ? I mean, I know it's a different mechanism, but how does it differ from the laser engraver? Doesn't it give you the same kind of result?
Yes and no, but there is limitations to the laser engraver. The laser engraver, the one limitation is size for one. So the one that I have is 18 inches by 32, I believe. So I would be limited to that size. That would be the maximum. The CNC router that I'm getting is 3 feet by 4 feet. Uh, so it's a bit larger. You can get larger than that, but actually, I
Money.
didn't. Yeah, exactly. Funding. That's the problem. So
How
and
much do
then
those cost?
the CNC ended up being at close to $19,000
Oh, wow.
for the 3x4. The laser engraver, when we bought it, which is this is 10 years ago, that was 32,000.
Wow.
They're cheaper now, I think. I think they might be they be more closer to like 20 something. Still pretty
Okay.
expensive.
Still.
Yeah, but they're more affordable for sure. So the other difference is just the look, how it looks. I mean, I think the laser engraver is way too perfect because it is
Mm.
a laser, and the way that it's drawing or cutting or engraving. The CNC router, because it uses a physical drill bit, they will dull over time, and so you're supposed to be changing them all the time, so that it gives you a nice clean cut. So you can still get nice clean edges. I'm not interested in that actually. So I'm gonna try to use bits that are more on the youth side, so that they actually shoot the wood, and give it like a more of a rough edges. So we'll see what happens.
But so if you're creating a woodcut block out of the CNC router drill bit thing, you don't have to go very deep with a woodcut. So, I
No,
mean, really, right? And then the kind of wood you're using, it could be that birch veneer, and you only have to go, an eighth of an inch or something, right?
mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean you can also use MDF, which you don't have to go too deep either, and it would be smoother and easier for the bits to drill through. So
But you don't want easy.
I don't. I seem to like complex processes.
But
Yeah, I
it's
don't know
good. I
why.
mean, the roughness of the materiality is important to the conceptual rigor of the work.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean it. Yeah, I mean I think about the idea. I visualize my images on my head first. I think about it too much. Sometimes I think maybe because I am a little too controlling. Maybe not. I don't know. But so I go through this kind of process for my work, in that I go through a period of research where the only thing I'm doing is reading the stories, seeing the photograph, all these images. And then I kind of get, you know, full with all this material to the point where I just can't do it anymore emotionally, it's too much. And so then I go through a period of processing all those images and all those ideas. So during that time, it might appear that I'm not doing anything, but I'm thinking the whole time about it. I don't sketch. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing for me, but I just don't. I don't have the habit of it. And the way that I sketch, it's all up here. Like I'll be lying in my bed or sitting in my office, if I don't have anything to do, and I'm just thinking. It looks like I'm drifting in space, but I'm actually just inside of my own head thinking like, how can I do? Like I'm doing compositions and I'm trying to visualize how I want the image to look like. And I go through months of doing this. And then I get to a point where it's like, okay, I think I know now how I can do it, how I'm going to do it. And then that's when I move into the studio and then start doing it. And it works for me because once I get to the studio, there's there's a little bit of trial and error, because not always it works, right? But most times it just kind of works for me because I thought about it so much. I know the tools, I know the material. And so by the time I get to the studio, I just start making it and it all just works out, which is kind of great. There's still a lot of unexpected things, which is great. And I do want that because it's what, in my experience, enhances the work. Um, they are never exactly how I picture them, but they're close enough.
Oh, huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But so you come up with an image in your head first and then figure out how it's going to get made? Or do you sort of say, oh, the CNC router can do this thing. Maybe I should do X?
No, I come up with the image first and then I figure out what can I do? What should I use to make it?
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Our mutual friend, True Ludwig, he thinks about the works for years.
I feel like I'm similar to that. It
Yeah.
doesn't take me years, it takes me months, but I completely understand that.
But I also, it's also a factor of the when you're in the semester, there is no making of work for him anyway. Like, I don't know about these folks who can, leave the classroom and then go make work. It seems crazy. But yeah, so there's these long periods where it's just brain work, but it's
Yeah.
work. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm the same. I usually can't make work during the semester. So that's why I also do a lot of residencies because that's kind of the only place where I can make work. And I think that's also why it works for me to do all these residencies because by the time I get to the residency, I know what I'm doing. Like I don't get there and then freak out and like, oh, what am I going to do? Because by then, like I had already everything figured out in my head. It's just about getting there and making it. I don't have to go through experimentation necessarily. I mean, I do, but not in a, not to the same degree as, other artists where they just kind of get there and they play, some people call it. Like I need to get there and then you play for like 2 weeks and then eventually that leads into like actually making work. Like I can't play because I need to get there, make work, leave the residency with finished work because that's the only time I can make it.
Right.
Right.
Which residency would you, I mean, not to poo poo any other residencies, but like which one's been the most fruitful for you or the best setup in terms of assistance and support and all that kind of stuff?
They're all great. They're all different and they're all similar at the same time. It's not like sense. Best setup, I think Kala in Berkeley, California. Amazing facilities, beautiful people, great people to work with. I've been there twice and both times the crew from the studio management were different. And both times they were just amazing people. So it was great experiences both times I was there. And like I said, the facilities are just, they're a dream. Huge space, big presses, everything you need, 24-hour access. And, residents do that, come in and work. And so you get to meet some other people and, have some chats. It was great. So the more I've been thinking about it, I think that's the one that I feel, facility wise. And well, I mean, just in general, it's kind of like the best, but really all of them have been great. I just came back from Venice. I was in Venice at the Scuola Grafica and that was a dream too. I mean, right now that residency is the highlight of my life.
Oh,
I don't know if it's because, it's the most recent one, but just the whole
or
experience,
because it's in Venice?
I mean, a whole month in Venice, how can you go wrong, right? Uh, but I mean, the facilities are great. The studio is, it's also very spacious. They have everything. The people are super, welcoming and super encouraging and supportive. It was just a great place to work as well. Just the location. I was walking every day in Venice, going from the place that I was staying to the studio, which was, they were in kind of like, not necessarily opposite ends, but far enough that, I had to walk through the entire city. Being my first time in Venice and having that experience of a city that is just unlike any other place I've ever been or probably will be, it was amazing. I mean, I really can't wait to go back. So those two have been, I think those are my top two, but like I said, all of
Okay.
them are great. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I think on the pod, we have never talked about the artist residency and what the setup is in terms of like, Is it pay to play? Are there ones that are funded? Is it hard to get in? Like, how does that all work?
It's all of that. So, I mean, there's residencies where you pay to play. There's residencies that are funded. There's residencies that are both. That how you can go pay and play, or you would basically wait until their applications for the funded. I personally only apply to residencies that are funded. It's something that started because of necessity. When I started doing all of this, I had no money. So the only way that I could do residency is if they are, paying you. And so I applied to all these places. They are, I can't really say how hard it is to get them, because I've been lucky enough that I've been accepted into many residencies, but it has taken me time. I mean, I think over time, my writing skills, I guess, have improved, and I make more of a convincing argument, to deserve the fellowships or the support to be able to go to these residencies. And so, like, for example, like Kala, I think it took me, well, actually, no, I'm not sure. I was going to say that it took me multiple tries, but Kala, I got it on the first one, which is kind of crazy. But I will say they kind of knew me before, though. They have seen my work because they have a gallery as well. The institution has a gallery, and the curator of the gallery had put me in a show. So they knew my work already. And I applied not too long after that exhibition. So I feel like it was fresh in their head. So maybe I got it. That's why I got it immediately. But the one inside that, for example, in Cleveland, I think that one took me 3 tries before I finally got it. The one in Venice, actually, also, that was also like 2 or 3 times before I finally got it. So it's just, it's perseverance, honestly, especially if you're young. I think when you're younger, it might appear more difficult, but I think it's because you're inexperienced. You don't have, well, one, you may not have the body of work, still developed enough to make a good impression. Your writing skills for this type of applications might not be the best yet. So the more you do it, the better you get at it. And then obviously the easier it becomes. I mean, now I don't want to say that it's easy for me, because it's not, but I do feel more encouraged because I feel like I have a better shot now. And, I still get denied, or declined from residencies, and I just don't stop. I'll wait till next year again. I'll apply again.
Sure.
But yeah, so far I've only applied to places that are funded because it's the best way to go, to be honest. I mean,
Oh, for sure.
yeah. I am thinking, though, that being said, I am thinking now of applying to places where I probably will pay to go, but because I can get funding through the school. So, for example, when I was doing my sabbatical last year, I did a residency at these London printmakers in London. And so when I was there, I took the advantage of traveling around the UK. I went to Scotland, and the studios in Glasgow and Edinburgh, top notch. I mean, I didn't mention those because I haven't worked there, but once I worked there, and I hate to say it, and I'm sorry, Kala, but it's going to top them. It's going to top Kala. Facilities, I mean, they're amazing. Both. I went to Edinburgh first, and I went to the studios, and I was floored when I came into the space. Like, they have a whole floor of nothing but studio with presses, plenty of space to move around, all the facilities that you could ever think or need, and beautiful lighting. I mean, in Edinburgh, beautiful place. So I was like, man, this is great. So I was like, I need to do a residency here. I don't think they have funded residencies at Edinburgh. So that's one. But I did ask, and like, oh yeah, you can definitely apply, and send the application. We'll review it, but I think I have to pay. So I was like, okay, that's fine. I mean, I was like, well, I'll guess I'll have money, to the college. And then I think a week later, I went to Glasgow, and it was better. Like, it was so much better than Edinburgh. And Edinburgh is already impressive. And I was like, oh my God, how can they do this? So in Glasgow, they told me that actually Scotland is really good at supporting the arts. And so they get a lot of funding. So both places, both Edinburgh and Glasgow, are supported by the government, by the country. So that's why they have amazing facilities. And people in Glasgow were telling me, oh, you should go even more up in Scotland because they're even better over there. And I'm like, you gotta be
Well,
kidding me. I was like, how can you top this already? So,
wow.
yeah, so those two are next on my list, hopefully. But I think Glasgow does have funded one, but I am already thinking of writing a proposal for getting funding from the school to go and do that because I don't think I can wait, 3 years until I get it. I think I need to go and do it. So,
I think it's great because it gives you a structure on during X month, I'm going to get X, Y, and Z done, and I must be prepared. Like, I think that would be really good for True actually to start,
mhm,
sending him on residencies in the summertime because
yeah.
maybe get some work done.
Yeah, so right now, like I applied also for funding for this coming summer. I'm hoping I'll get the funding and then I'll go to Dresden, to the graphic studio in Dresden and spend some time there doing work.
Was Michael Barnes just there? Did I dream? Wasn't he just there?
No, he was in Munich.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah. I want to go back to Munich. I visited him when she did a residency several years ago and I was in Berlin. So we kind of visited each other. He went to Berlin and then we went back to Munich. I actually want to do that residency too, but that's a lithography specific one. And I'm not a lithographer. I will say that lithography, I like it. I want to do it. I know how to do it, but I feel like my approach to making work doesn't suit it. Like
Mm,
that technique does not suit my aesthetic, I guess. And so it's hard because I want to do it. I can't come up with something that would take advantage of the medium. And that's why I don't try it. But that residency is beautiful too, beautiful space. But it's lithography, it's only lithography. Maybe in the
yeah.
future.
Right.
Yeah,
Something will come up. You did a body of work with Catherine at Flatbed that had to do with your mother. Will you
I
tell us
did.
about that?
Yeah. That was also last year during my sabbatical. So my mom passed away in 2019 before the pandemic. Because of the pandemic, actually, I couldn't go back home to kind of go through her things essentially. I mean, I did go back for, the services and everything. But then I immediately came back, to New York because it was in the middle of the semester. And then the pandemic happened. So nobody was traveling. So it was kind of put on hold as far as like me going back home and really think of, or, I guess go through what she had left. And so the whole time, during the pandemic, it was just weighing on me too that, I had lost my mom, obviously. And when I got it finally home in 2021, I guess, it must have been, my brother like left everything untouched. He was living with her in the house and he kind of left everything untouched, the way that she left things. So we went through it together, through her stuff. And I found a lot of crocheted pieces like doilies and a lot of things that she also needed. She was very good with craft. She would crochet and knitted a lot. And I just remember growing up with all these things around the house. I just wanted to do something to help me, I guess, grieve, but also to, as a memorial for her and as a celebration of her life. At the time, I was also kind of looking for something different that I could do as a body of work. But at that time, I was getting burned out a little bit from reading all this, doing all this research about the violence in Mexico. And then my mom passing away, that it became a little too much. Mortality became way too present in my life, and so I decided I'm going to try something different, something new. And so I started playing with all these doilies, doing cyanotypes, quick impressions, using the object directly onto the paper. And then out of that, it came out this body of work that I did with Kathy at Flatbed, where I essentially just photographed the doilies as they are and started working or experimenting, playing rather, with formal, aspects in art, color, shape, form. And so I created this series of these pieces. And I'm still doing that. Like that after those pieces, I got really excited. I think it helped me with my reading process, but it also it made me have a connection with my mom. And so it's something that I'm also doing now as part of my practice. I'm also playing with the subjects and, pushing them. I don't know. I'm going to be honest. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where it's going to go, but I'm super happy and excited to do it. I have ideas. I'm not just, shooting with blind eyes, but I honestly like it. If I don't have it as controlled as my other bodies of work where I have to have everything figured out before I make the piece because it's a sensitive subject matter and I have to be respectful, about it. And with this one, it's personal. So I also want to be respectful, obviously, and careful about it. But I think it allows for more play, more ground to be able to just explore and allow myself maybe to make mistakes. So that's kind of what I'm doing. Yeah. So those lithographs, they're made out of these images of these doilies that my mom crocheted. They're exactly to the size of the original object, as true as possible to the colors. And yeah, like that, they're just kind of explorations of, form and color. I do see them now as kind of like symbols for like cell structures because my mom passed away out of, we think from heart attack. To be honest, we don't know, but it is the most likely, culprit. She had, um, two other episodes, two other heart attacks in the past, and she always recuperated almost 100% after each one. And this one came out of nowhere. We spoke with a cardiologist and he was surprised when he heard because, he went back into his files and he called us and he was like, your mom was doing so much better that she had told her that she should do checkups only once a year because she was just doing so well. But she said, the heart does what it does. He said, it's one of those things that it will give up whenever it wants to without any warning. So because of that, I've been thinking about the heart disease. My father, unfortunately, also passed away out of a heart attack many years ago, back in 2001. And so I know most likely that's kind of what's going to take me. Uh,
Oh,
I mean, it took both my parents and, I'm their descendant. So it's going to there. So I have to think about it, even if it's not true. I have to think about it, and so that's how I'm seeing this. These pieces. I see them as these cellular structures that I guess I'm trying to make that connection. Those connections, things that my mom made, things that were present in my mom's body, and so trying to make that into the body of work. So actually, I'm going to have a solo show here in my college at the gallery, February 15th. It opens and it's going to be up until also mid to late March. And the entire exhibition is going to be based on the body of work inspired by my mom. So
oh,
it's the pieces from Flatbed, pieces that I did during my sabbatical at different places like Cala, and then also I did some in Venice as well. So I'm excited because it's the first time I'm showing the pieces in a gallery or in a show, essentially. I've shown them. I did show the ones from Flatbed, the print fair last year, and they've been showing it in other print fairs, but not in an exhibition yet.
right, right.
I'm excited for that. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Is there anything else you want to let people know about you and where people can find you? And
Well, yes. So like I said, I'm going to be having this show in the spring. I am going to be participating at the conference in Providence. I co-organized an exhibition and then a panel. So we're going to be there in April. So if anybody's around, hopefully you'll come and check us out. The panel and the exhibition.
that's the SGCI conference.
Correct. The LGCI conference, print conference. Both the exhibition and the panel, they're essentially based on borders or, issues with borders. Well, I'm going to be an artist in residence at Gutenberg Art in Gutenberg, New Jersey as well. So I'm excited to have access to the studio over there and, make some work, develop some work. And then, yeah, you can find me obviously my website, and I'm on Instagram. I make it very hard because it's my name. So it's Miguel.A.Aragon. I don't know why, but you can find me there.
Probably other Miguel Aragons in the world.
There are actually, but
Yeah.
I could come up with a better handle. Something simple, short. I don't know. But yeah, so I post all kinds of things, not too personal stuff, but a lot from my travels, a lot of, things that I find interesting visually, and not enough of my work though. I should be posting more of my work,
Yes, you
but
should.
I still see it as an art, an artistic Instagram page, I think.
Okay, I think right.
Yeah, those are those are kind of like my sketches. I was listening to an artist. I was at Anderson Ranch this summer. I was invited to go teach a class there, and one artist was doing a presentation, and she was saying that for a long time she was taking pictures, and she kind of didn't know why she was taking pictures. Other than she kind of enjoyed what she was looking at and creating this composition. And then eventually she realized that basically that's her sketchbook, in that she then started using some of those photographs to actually make work, based on photographs or using those starting points. And that resonated with me a lot because I a lot of the times I spend a lot of time taking pictures of things or landscapes or whatever. And I spend way too much time sometimes like framing the right photograph. And I'm not doing it for Instagram fame. Like I'm not doing it so that I can make somebody jealous of where I'm at. I'm just doing it because I find it interesting. And so I'm now thinking that maybe that is my sketchbook. It's how I process images visually. So it's something I'm going to be thinking about.
It's funny. I've talked about sketchbooks with a couple of different artists over the course of these interviews. It started because Emma Nishimura said, when I was a student and the professors kept saying, draw on your sketchbook, draw on your sketchbook. She looked at hers and it was all writing about ideas, kind of as you are, these ideas formulate and then you enact them, but it doesn't require sketching something. And just to be true to your own self and whatever boiling pot of things you throw all of your ideas into, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Let it be, right?
Yeah. I remember that. I saw that podcast with you. And I was very happy to hear that from her too. Because I love her work. And I'm like, okay, I'm glad that I'm not the only one. Because she's great and she doesn't have a sketchbook. So I'm okay then to not have a sketchbook. It was validation.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
glad that works. Yeah. Awesome. And yeah, I love her work as well. You guys could do a nice show together, actually.
Well, she's actually going to be one of the artists in the group show at NCCI.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. I think there's 6 or 7 of us in the show, and she's one of them. So,
great.
I'm excited for the exhibition.
Yeah. Yeah, I love her work. All right. Well, so everybody needs to go to SGCI. I think I probably need to go.
You should. It's going to be fun.
I've only been to one in Madison because it's, it's a different kind of sphere than where I had been working from the museum end. And
Right.
yeah, so it's a whole different circle of people. It's kind of cool.
They're always fun. I don't go every year, but I've been going more recently, actually. But I usually try to go like every other year because if you start going every year too, like you start to get a little burned out in that they start to feel the same. But they're a lot of fun. It's like, imagine Print Week, but almost a whole week.
Print camp.
Yeah, it's like print camp, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for coming on Platemark. You're a delight, and I love talking to you.
Thank you so much, Ann. Me too. This was really great. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Platemark with my guest, Miguel Aragon. A special thank you to him for being a wonderful guest. I love his work, and you should check it out. Other thank yous should always go out to the people who helped me put this thing together. A thank you to Michael Diamond for the use of his original music. A second one always goes to Dan Fury of Extension Audio for helping me with the first pass at editing and being my sound guy, because, good Lord, I don't understand. And also a thank you to Lee Turner and Skip Barnhart for sending me sounds from their print studios for the soundscape at the beginning of the pod. I think that might be it. Oh, no, it's not it. You should go over to platemarkpodcast.com. You're going to find the images we talk about over there. And also, you'll find that lovely, glowing, I should hit it button that says support and donate. You can help me keep the lights on here. It's just me doing this. And if you value what I'm bringing to you content-wise, consider supporting me. All right, that's it. We'll see you next time.